Greetings, I'm Laura Pucha Valtorta. It's the end of October in South Carolina, Halloween, Diwali season, and guess what? The weather is still hot, like in the 80s. I'm a content creator, and my movies include Bermuda and Disaster Man and the Disease Detective series. All of these are available on Amazon and Tubi. A big shout out today to our listeners in Canada and New York State. And later, after the episode, after the short story, I'm going to tell you why. For now, welcome to a new episode of my podcast, B is for Bisexual, a short story entitled Tabitha Travels. I watch BBC films and detective stories all the time. Let me tell you, I'm a fan of BritBox. British actors are great. A little quirky. That's what this story is about. As always, my family is helping me read the story. Here today are my son Dante.
Ciao.
And my husband Marco.
Buongiorno.
After we read this short story, I'll tell you what's coming up in November. It's pretty exciting. And now, Tabitha Travels. It was the week before Christmas. Tabitha sat on a bench in the London St. Pancras train station with her new friend Amadou, waiting for a train to Brussels. They had met at the University of London and had become friends almost immediately. They were traveling to meet Amadou's brother, Sarif, who lived with his partner, his best friend from school, in the Ixal neighborhood. Sarif and Amadou and his best friend were all from Mali. Tabitha was a spoiled actor's kid. Tabitha's parents did not know she was going away. She took out her notebook and began to work on her memoir. As a kid, I thought my parents' lifestyle might kill me unless it killed them first. My parents and Jana were constantly torn between what they wanted to do with their lives and what society expected. The press encouraged them. The press wanted to see the fight. Tabitha loved her parents, Sean and Sun Ming, but she thought their lifestyles were insane. 2 households, 2 women, 1 silly man, 5 children, sometimes apart, sometimes together, Christmas back and forth in 2 sitting rooms, kids yelling. Gold and red Chinese New Year with Sun Ming. Double birthday celebrations for Tabitha and her brother Jay. This was the first Christmas she would be away. All of them would notice. I felt almost bad about being away for Christmas dinner. My mom might even call the police, but then I remembered my dad Sean forcing us to sit together at Jana's big dining table, the veggie loaf, boiled turnips, and my mother's Chinese Christmas pudding with a horrible surprise in the middle. I wanted to escape to my room and read Oryx and Crake, but Sean never let us leave until we exploded the Christmas crackers and put the paper crowns on our heads. Then he snapped a terrible photo and showed it around to everybody. Tabitha's mother lived in a big apartment in Hampstead Heath, down the street from Tabitha's father, Sean Peebles, the British actor, famous for his sarcasm and his floppy hair, who had produced 2 children with her mother, Sun Ming, boom, and then bam, while still married to his wife, Jana de Klerk, with whom he had 3 children, all of this happening at the same time. It made a great story. Sometimes funny, maybe, but it was all too real. I often wondered about the emotional journey my dad took. How was it possible for Dad to father kids from 2 women at opposite ends of the street and opposite ends of the globe, pregnant at the same time, and act as though he cared about all of us? Somehow it made me angry. Her mom, Sun Ming, was a Chinese actor and cabaret dancer. Tabitha thought she was addicted to money. Her English was embarrassing to listen to. She spoke to her children in Mandarin. Sean sometimes dressed in costumes to avoid the press, bowler hats or a Father Christmas costume. He pooh-poohed all the rules. He laughed at talk show hosts like Colbert and Anderson Cooper while making tons of money in Hollywood. Some common and weird things Sean said to his children were,
"Every happy day begins with a giant poop."
or,
"Let's all try on Jana's dresses."
Tabitha thought he was mixed up, but there wasn't much she could do about it. Sun Ming enjoyed parties at her large apartment. She invited musicians and circus performers. They all made a lot of noise. Tabitha dreamed of a quiet life. She wanted to be a writer and a librarian, stay single. When she was a child, going out with Sean and her 4 brothers and sisters, the paparazzi followed them everywhere. Her dad couldn't take them to the playground or the zoo without random people taking pictures or darting up to touch Sean's sleeve or asking for an autograph. Sean would turn to the children and say,
"Hey, do you see those blokes over there? Smash their cameras and I'll give you £1 each."
The photographers dodged them and laughed and took even more pictures, but when the kids got older, they did break a few cameras. Tabitha's favorite activity was sleeping. She was like Rip Van Winkle and Roger Federer in that regard. Nothing beat the quiet night with stars, a comfortable bed, the darkness. Being alone with her thoughts. By the morning, after a good kip, she would have figured things out. She also loved reading and writing stories, and she had in mind what her first best-selling book would be, a memoir about life with her crazy mom and her flippant dad, who had a lot of money because he was a famous star. Pooh to the famous part. Yes to the money. Tabitha took out her notebook. In both houses, Mum's and Dad's, I had my own comfortable bedroom with private bath and bookshelves. I could see the night sky. I liked to sleep in both places. Getting up, going to school, and explaining my crazy life to my friends was the hard part. Do-do-do-do. Her parents, all 3 of them really, when you counted Jana, had nice dwellings in London and trips abroad, and enough money for fine schools. But Tabitha considered, when she was 10 years old, that this situation wouldn't last forever for her. What if her brother Jay got greedy? What if her father migrated to Australia and had 6 more children? One day, she, Tabitha, would grow up and no longer enjoy the noisiness of her 4 brothers and sisters, or waffle breakfast cooked by Jana, or free room and board. The nebbish company of her mother, who would say,
"Where are you going now? You finish your schoolwork? Wear more makeup."
Tabitha had a plan. Dad, I don't want to go to boarding school.
"Darling, why not?"
Sean put down his knife and fork.
"It's a necessary rite of passage, like getting smashed or dating older men."
Sean, said Jana. I like my school, said Tabitha. My friends have all heard the story of my life. They aren't going away to boarding school. They're all going to Hampstead School, right here. And I want you to save all that money for boarding in a bank account with my name on it, so I can have it and buy a house when I get ready for college. The whole table had erupted into shouting.
"You can't do that,"
said her brother Jay.
"You're not old enough."
Ha ha,
said Sean.
"You're looking ahead like a loving daughter who wants my money. I understand what you're saying. Save the money for you in a piggy bank."
A real bank, said Tabitha, with my name on the account. Sean had smiled.
"Oh, darling Tabitha, we shall do what you say."
And so he took her to the bank that day, and they set up the account. All the extra money went into it that Sean would have spent on boarding school for Tabitha. Sun Ming, her mother, wasn't so happy about the idea.
You wanna move out? My baby can't move out.
She sounded like a fly buzzing on the window. Tabitha stuck her face deeper into pride and prejudice. At 17, Tabitha went to the University of London with her tuition all paid for by Sean, and she lived in her own new apartment with no rent or mortgage on the floor directly above Sun Ming. She got a job at the university library. She began writing her memoir.
You wanna be a librarian?
Said Sun Ming in Mandarin.
Write books? What's that for? You're so pretty you could be a fashion model or an actress. Earn a lot of money, like your dad.
Tabitha exercised her frustration by working on her memoir. I wanted to look like my mother, who is pretty and Chinese, or my dad, who had thick wavy hair and paper white skin. Instead, I was tall as a tree, with straight mouse-brown hair and quill-shaped eyes, a sneer on my face. I was ugly in my own mind, but they would miss me. They would all miss me when I was gone. Do-do-do-do! Tabitha glared at her mother, who was short but sinewy and seductive, with eyes lined in liquid black makeup. Her parents had never been married, but Sean was good to her and to her brother Jay. He raised them all like family and treated her mother with respect. Hey, Ma, being a librarian and a writer is not against the law.
What are you gonna write about?
Said Sun Ming.
You live like a quiet mouse all the time. Not very exciting.
But Tabitha knew exactly what she would write about. Her dad's stupid jokes and endless sarcasm. Her mother's pushiness. The way Jana pretended to like her and Jay when maybe she really wanted to kick them both out of the house. Her mother's funny accent in English. It would serve them all right. They were so embarrassing. She wanted to steam them like dumplings. Do-do-do-do. At university, Tabitha and her friend Sarah both worked at the library. When Tabitha was a first year, Sarah understood not to pester Tabitha for an autograph or lunch out with Sean. Sarah knew how to avoid the Tabitha stare. Sarah shaved her head and wore black jeans and a t-shirt every day of the week. She had weak tea-colored skin. Together they scrutinized the library and library patrons, making fun of the ones who deserved it, the students with names like Nigel and Max, who slept at the library because they had partied the night before. Tabitha and Sarah watched them, poked them, and smiled. When these wankers failed their classes and got kicked out of school, Tabitha and Sarah laughed. The girls thought they had the secret to life. They spent all their money on pub lunches and theater tickets. They took trains to Cornwall and Kent during the off-season. They studied and did well on their papers. They didn't get drunk. One day, Amadou was studying in the stacks. He was chocolate-colored and thin. His bony knees rocked the underside of the desk. You can use the desk in the lounge, said Tabitha. It's a bit taller.
Pardon me?
Said Amadou. He stared at her. His hair was like a porcupine, made of short, tiny braids. I thought you might be more comfortable in the lounge.
That lounge is full of roofs,
said Amadou.
I'm okay right here.
Tabitha went back to shelving reference books. It was clear to her what the word floofs meant. The university was crowded with them, like the foam on a cappuccino. She stared at Amadou from inside the stacks. He was studying some legal books and a biography of Alan Turing. Tabitha walked over to the lounge. There were a couple of students necking, and a hungover guy stretched out on a bench. Tabitha clapped her hands. Listen up, people. No sleeping in the lounge. The snorkeling couple glared at her, but they stood up and walked away. Tabitha prodded the sleeping drunk in the small of his back. Out! Get out now! The disheveled guy stood up, blinked his eyes, and staggered out. Amadou strode over carrying his books. He was very tall.
Thank you, Miss Librarian.
Tabitha felt her body rise up a couple of inches. Sarah and Tabitha ate lunch at the Black Cat pub, shepherd's pie.
You best be careful,
said Sarah after hearing the story of Amadou.
You could lose your job kicking students out.
I was following the rules, said Tabitha, the library rules. And Joanne likes my dad's movies. Joanne was their boss. I could always give her a signed photograph. I have a stack of them in my closet. Signed them myself. Said Sarah, leaning back.
You didn't.
Keep your voice down, said Tabitha. It looks just like Sean's signature.
Oh, it sounds like you're in love with this bloke, Amadou,
said Sarah. Perhaps. I'm going to ask him out. Midsummer Night's Dream at the Coliseum. Sarah made a face.
I might be turning green over this.
Don't worry, said Tabitha. You'll always be my best mate. Sun Ming passed Amadou climbing up the stairs to Tabitha's apartment, but she said very little. She just nodded a greeting.
Hey, I live downstairs.
She often pointed out to Tabitha.
If you need me.
Tabitha did not need her mother telling her what to do, and then always telling Sean and Jana everything about her.
I heard you're dating someone special,
said Sean one day at breakfast. Her brothers and sister, Jay, Sally, Lizard, and Bear, had already left for school. Yes, his name is Amadou, and he wants to be a lawyer and a travel writer. Sorry, Dad. He is the same age as me, and he's not married or anything. Jana, who was turning the bacon in the pan, laughed. Ha ha ha.
Well, don't worry, darling.
Said Sean.
We still love you.
Amadou was most impressed with Tabitha's mother.
Wow, she's from China. Do you think she'll take us there?
Tabitha shifted on the couch. Surely. She goes there at least once a year. It's a hassle. Too many people in Guangzhou. They all stare at me.
That is your life,
said Amadou.
Being stared at. When we go to China together, they will stare at me also.
Oh, you may be right, said Tabitha. You'll take the pressure off me. Even a little Africa. You're so tall. They discussed what food they would eat in China. My mother can cook dumplings.
Let's go down and ask her to make us some dumplings. Let's do it now.
And here from the notebook. On the way to Brussels in the train, Amadou made a confession to me.
My brother,
he said,
is not a perfect guy. He left the family back in Bamako, a wife and a son. He was afraid he was going to lose his job because of Ali. Being gay is not illegal there, but it's a problem. He was not happy in Bamako.
I just nodded. What could I say? Every day with relatives, there were tough situations. It was always messy. Sitting next to Amadou on the train felt warm and safe. He put his arm around Tabitha's shoulder for a moment, then he slept. Tabitha laid down her notebook and picked up her phone. She'd thought about her family in London and how they might worry, maybe even call the police. Her place at the Christmas table would be empty. Even Jay, who is sometimes jealous, might hate for her to get hurt or lost. She looked at her phone and pressed Jana's number. She texted her the name and address of Sarif in Brussels. This is where I'm going for Christmas, she wrote. She pressed her father's number and wrote, I love you, Dad. Then she called her mother. And that's the end of Tabitha Travels. Dear listener, November 7th through 10th, 2024, I'll be in Lake Placid, New York for the Adirondack Film Festival, combined with the Catalyst Stories Festival. It sounds like a fun time. I have a table read scheduled, the first few acts of my screenplay Zoom hit. There will also be a screening of my documentary, The Diseased Detective Looks at Aphasia. I hope to see you there, even if it's just for the hockey. Ciao for now, dear listener. See you in a month.
Adios.
Arrivederci.
Ciao.